Good afternoon. My name is Jonathan Weems and I'm from X2X Solutions. I'm joined today by Phil Morton, and we are doing a new thing called a 5-minute one-to-one, where I talk to local businesses and each of us have a chance to do our 60-second pitch, and then the opposite person gets to ask questions and delve in a little bit more into what they actually do. My name is Jonathan Weems and I run a company called X2X Solutions. What we do is we reduce cloud costs for organizations that have or create their own digital products. Think as a digital product, like we use them on a day-to-day basis. You use social media, GPS, payments, even when you go to Asda or Tesco's and use a self-service checkout. Behind that, they have web services that connect us databases, etc. For a professional, say for example, you're an estate agent, you might use Rightmove, you might use a CRM, you do lots of different tools. If like you're a health and safety inspector, when you've done your tests and you've done you filled out your documentation, you need to put that on a system. They might have like an iPad or something like that. Or if like you're an accountant, you may have certain accountant software like Xero, payroll, etc. And those tools, those companies are the ones that I work with. These companies, they tend to have their hosting or their back-end services in a cloud provider, and these cloud providers is you've got three main ones, which is AWS, Amazon Web Services, Azure, which is Microsoft Cloud, and GCP, which is Google Cloud Platforms. There's also a couple of smaller ones like DigitalOcean, etc. So as I said, I work to reduce the cost of that. A recent survey has of people who use cloud providers, they self-report that they have overspend of 27%. So if, say, for instance, you were paying $1,000 or $10,000 or pounds per month, that would have a significant effect on your costs, and you can then reinvest that into building new projects.
So you're looking for clients that have had issues with apps, systems, processes. Is it kind of a mainly cloud-based?
Well, mainly, as I said, mainly I'm concentrating on the FinOps aspect. I mean, obviously, when I say reduce cloud costs, it's not just the cost, because obviously there's the cost of running it. There's the cost of building things. There's the cost of potential security implications. But there's also compliance as well. So all of those can be a cost. In the tech business, we sort of call those non-functional requirements. So when you build an application, you have a list of features that you want to include, and they are a functional requirement. So they're stuff that people use. But while you're building those features, you also need to take into account of how optimized it is, how much RAM or CPU will this function use, and obviously if it's optimized, it will use less than what it was, and all those usages, they all have costs involved in them. So although I do concentrate on the FinOps aspects, ideally I would, once we've saved some money, then we can use that money to then optimize other areas of the platform.
Okay. So if someone from you is not very techy and tech-minded, can you explain FinOps?
Yeah, so I mean, FinOps is a term. It's you may have heard of DevOps, you may not have heard of DevOps, but essentially it's a set of principles. So it's basically the way you do something. So there's principles, and then there's also the pillars. So there are three main pillars, which is the inform, which is basically looking and monitoring and being knowing what you're using, because obviously you can't save money if you don't know how much you're using. There's the optimize, and that's when you actually go about and you save that money. So you know, if you've got zombie resources, which are basically resources that aren't being used, where someone's created them in the past and they've been forgotten about, you need to not be paying for those because you're not even using them. So those need to be closed down, but they need to be closed down in a managed way to make sure it doesn't affect services. And the third pillar is the operate pillar, which is once you've you've done the monitoring, you know what you're doing, you know what you're using, you've done the optimization. Now we need to continue it in the future. So we need to embed it into the culture of the development team, that when they build something, they're aware of what effects it has on cost. And you know, it can be a continual process rather than just one-off saving money. You know, because you'd save some money and then it would slowly rot in again and you'd end up back in the same situation.
So would I be right in thinking that you actually work with the client rather than working for the client? You don't do the work for them, you will help them to develop it with their team. Is that essentially, am I right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the size of the client. So, you know, a lot of clients, they have development teams, they have DevOps engineers, but they don't have the solid experience behind that, because obviously I've worked in lots of different organizations and I've seen, you know, from small to large companies on how good ways and bad ways to do things are able to quickly come into a business, use that experience and say, you've got stuff here, you've got a large database that you're not using, and you know, I can put that as like a solutions architect, build up a report and say these are the things you need to do. But also, if they haven't got the resources, then I could either, you know, if it's manageable, I could do it, or also I could find someone for them to do that as well.
Okay. Well, I've certainly got a clear opinion of what you're doing now, and it makes it easier for me to understand. Like I say, I'm not techie at all, so it's hard for someone who's not techie to understand certain terms.
Yeah, and that's what I try and do. You know, a lot of my job isn't, you know, I come from a techie background, and you know, if you speak to techies, you know, they're right in the weeds. It's very difficult to come from that level and you know, be deep in code and then go and speak to someone that has no idea what a function is, or a method, or you know, an EC2 instance. So, you know, I try and put those in simple terms that people of all levels can understand it. And, you know, I also build my documentation based on my audience. So if I'm working with technical focused people who understand those, you know, I can use more technical terms. Where if someone has no idea, obviously, you know, I have to word it in the right way for it to be able to understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so Phil, what can you tell me more about PMBD?
Yeah, certainly. So PMBD is Phil Morton Business Development. It's essentially me helping businesses to grow. So the way that works is basically I look for the clients on behalf, sorry, look for the customers on behalf of the clients. So my ideal customer or my ideal client is a small business that wants to grow, but doesn't quite have the time or the ability to look out those leads or to nurture them. So we all know that we can run a business, but how do we go out and find individual leads and more business? And that's essentially where I come in. A lot of the work that I do is mainly through networking. So I'm your eyes, your ears, and your voice when you're not around. And I look for those connections in networking meetings that is essentially ideal for you and your business. So if you're not in the room when I am, I can actually listen to what people are asking for, or what their needs are, or their wants are, and try and connect the two together to be able to put you in front of them because you're not there. the way that works is through either email marketing, telecommunications, not necessarily telesales, because I don't like the hard sell or the hard pitch. That's not me. But I will try and nurture a conversation between you and your potential customer, your potential clients. Once I get the lead warmed up to the point where I'm happy to hand it over, if it becomes into a point of costing, I don't get involved with costing because that would just confuse me and the customers as well. I don't want to undersell or oversell your business or the product and service you're offering. So when it comes to price, I'll pass it back to you, and then you price it, and either you can close the deal or I can close the deal, whichever suits us as a company. But that's essentially in a nutshell what I do as PMBD.
Okay, that's great. So how long have you been doing this for?
I'm now currently in fifth year, on the 6th of January next year.
Yeah.
It's the 5th birthday of PMBD. So
Okay.
5 years.
And so what's the biggest challenge that you find?
The biggest challenge I wouldn't say I find is to actually start a conversation on the cold cuff. So that any kind of new business that needs to be found, how do you approach them? Is that email? Is it telephone? Is it face-to-face networking? Where would I find the ideal client? And that's why in the first month of what I do for any client, it's all about research. So to try and find that ideal client and find out how they communicate with their customers, so I can use that avenue to get in front of them and talk to them. So I would say the research aspect is probably one of the longest and hardest processes that I do at the moment.
Okay. And where would your clients be based?
So when I first started the business, I've always used the same tagline, which is keeping business local and keeping locals in business. So I normally would expect to work around the regional area of South Yorkshire. But I also have a client in Glasgow, and at the moment I am working through data for companies in Glasgow for this client. Rather than bringing it down south, we're trying to keep that connection up north for the moment. But he's wanting to break into the south of England or mid England, and he just basically wants to concentrate on where he is for the moment, see what lead I can generate and produce there, and then work his way down.
Yeah. And you said so you said you work with small businesses.
Yeah.
What would be an ideal sort of employee count for you?
So a normal employee count is a sole trader, single person business, up to around about 2 or 3 people in a business. I have got larger clients with multiple employees or volunteers. South Yorkshire Transport Museum being one of those. But I help them by bringing the business together, and whatever business that looks like, separating it into the sectors and areas of the charity. If it's for a business, I'll separate it and try and nurture those relationships and conversations to the appropriate person in that business. So it's not always about business development to business development. It could be business development to salesperson to managing director to board of trustees. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So am I right in saying that you focus only on business to business?
Yes. Yeah. I don't do business to consumer or business to public. It is business to business.
So you don't go outside wearing a sandwich board?
Not yet. Although I have bought a cafe.
Or spinning a sign?
We do own a cafe in Clifton Park, or around Clifton Park. But no, I won't wear a sandwich board. That's really not my bag. That's the missus. She can have that one.
So thanks for joining me, Phil. And I've really enjoyed getting to know what you do.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. It's been great talking to you, and I now know more about X2X as well. So thank you for the opportunity as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Take care.